Hello, everybody. Welcome in to a new week of the Black and Gold Breakdown, Monday, June 3rd. Appreciate you being here tonight. Steelers still in search of another wide receiver. That's going to be the basis of today, mostly because Justin Jefferson just got paid, and we're going to find out sooner or later if teams, like the 49ers are going to be willing to give Brandon Aiyuk a big chunk of change, and if the extension for Justin Jefferson, if that affects certain receivers around the league this offseason, and it affects how teams go about signing their guys and extending their guys this year, or if we'll see more of that go into effect next offseason. But with receiver talk kind of in the air right now, it felt like, an appropriate time to discuss other wide receivers around the league in terms of their likelihood of landing in Pittsburgh, if it's going to happen this offseason, and, who are the most likely guys left that the Steelers are, still going to pursue. It's going to be, the names that we've been accustomed to over the past couple months. Names like Brandon Aiyuk and Deebo Samuel are going to be floated out there by fans, especially when you look at Aiyuk's situation in particular. He wants paid, he wants extended. They just extended Juwan Jennings. I think it was 2 years, $15 million for Juwan Jennings, who's going to be, their third receiver and has been for, the last couple of years. I also drafted Ricky Pearsall in the first round out of Florida, and a lot of people are like, okay, that's earlier than we thought Ricky Pearsall was going to go. And then obviously they have Deebo Samuel, they have Brandon Aiyuk. Deebo Samuel going to cost them a good amount of money this year. I think his cap hit is like $26 million, something of that nature, $28 million. So he's going to be making a lot of dough this season. And then obviously Brandon Aiyuk wants extended. And the longer the 49ers wait, the longer a deal doesn't get done, especially after today. You see a Justin Jefferson get his deal done and become the highest paid non-quarterback in the history of football. If you're a team like San Francisco, that kind of makes you pull your hair out a little bit. If you're a team like Dallas, that, because I still got to extend CeeDee Lamb, that makes you go, If you're the Bengals, you still got to extend Jamar Chase. Now you're looking at that like, that's going to cost us at least close to that. So, and again, I've been pretty adamant that I don't think it will be one of the 49ers receivers. I feel like if that was going to happen. Now, I will say this. Ray Fittipaldo of the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, he said that he thinks it's going to be one of those two. At this point, it is a lot of just guessing, taking the context that we have, taking all of what we've seen and just trying to make an educated guess as what will happen next. Now, there's still some people who believe that the Steelers will get one of those two guys. And then there's people like myself, Nick Farbaugh of Steelers Now, who are saying the most likely guy is probably Courtland Sutton. But even then, I told you I would do a little bit more digging on that front. And what I dug up is a lot more of the same, where Courtland Sutton still wants a new contract. The Broncos still do not want to give him one, but they still do not want to trade him. So they are still very much deadlocked. Now, they've still yet to reach the mandatory minicamp part of the offseason. Obviously, we're still a little bit away, about, over a month away from camp. But the fact that both sides seem to be still very far away in terms of what's next, I still think that Sutton is a name to keep an eye on. Because again, I know that he wants a new deal. I know that he just wants to be somewhere where he's valued. No, Courtland Sutton isn't going to demand, $30 million a year. He's not going to demand $25 million a year. He might demand somewhere in the high teens, potentially low 20s in terms of the new contract that he wants. And in the wide receiver market, if he wanted something in the high teens, that's probably pretty fair market value for Courtland Sutton. He's played with 10 quarterbacks since being drafted in 2018 by the Broncos. And he's coming off a year where he had a career high in touchdown passes or career high in touchdown receptions with 10. And he's got a great rapport with Russell Wilson. Those two have a great relationship. And Pittsburgh, it was confirmed to me, reached out to Denver both before and during the draft, reached out to the Broncos trying to see if they could acquire Courtland Sutton. So it's a guy that they want. It's a guy that they've reached out multiple times about acquiring, and they've been told no both times. But again, once we reach the mandatory mini camp portion of the offseason, and if Courtland Sutton isn't showing up for the mandatory things, and if no progress is still being made, maybe the Broncos would change their tune and be willing to trade him. So that's still, I think, the most likely name out of all of the names that have been floated. All the big names, at least. Because Treylon Burks is still a name that will be kind of the fallback if I'm the Steelers. That would be my guess. Where, okay, everybody and their mother knows the Titans want to move him, but they're going to keep going big game hunting until it's proven, okay, they aren't going to get one of these big names, fall back, get Treylon Burks, and go from there. But, they're still going to try to get a Courtland Sutton, more than likely. I would assume they're still going to try to be active and maybe see if they can get one of the 49ers receivers, but I think that ship is more or less sailed. But the Treylon Burks thing, again, I think that is more of, okay, we try to get one of the 49ers guys. We were turned down. Denver's not going to trade Courtland Sutton. Or maybe, because the Rams were the other team that was floated as reaching out to Denver about trying to get Sutton. So maybe somebody just beats him to the punch and they can't get him. But they will bring in somebody. And my best guess out of all the big names remaining is that it will be Sutton, if I had to pick out of all of the big fish. What do you think of the Deebo trade idea floated out that would have us giving up a second and James Daniels? I haven't seen that. This is the first I'm seeing of it. I think in terms of giving up a second round pick and a player, they would have to get something else in return on top of Deebo, especially because you look at what the wide receiver market has been this offseason. Jerry Jeudy went for 2 day 3 picks. Deontay Johnson, who is a better go-to receiver than Deebo Samuel is. Deebo Samuel is an offensive weapon. Sure, he's a versatile weapon, but he's not a separator. He's not a guy that you look at as being an outside a type of guy who's known for his route running ability and separation. If the Steelers got Deebo Samuel, cool, you got another weapon, but it doesn't necessarily solve your need for an X receiver. So I personally wouldn't like that too much, especially because just finish out this year with James Daniels and keep him in-house so you don't have to rush along Mason McCormick. Because again, it's pretty evident they're not going to re-sign James Daniels, if I had to guess. Now, it's not impossible, but when you're letting a guy like that hit the open market, he's going to get a bag from somebody, especially because he's still only in his, mid to late 20s. He's still got a lot of football left in him. There's no reason why they would trade him this year. Again, you drafted Mason McCormick in the 4th round. They didn't take him with the intentions of him never playing, but they don't want him to play right away. No reason to rush that whole process along when you've got Isaac Seumalo and James Daniels there. Let McCormick learn for a year. Let him learn behind Daniels and Seumalo. And then if you don't bring back Daniels next season, then you've got Mason McCormick, who you drafted for a reason. After a year of grooming and getting ready to start, then you can do that. So I don't love the idea of giving up James Daniels as part of a trade. I think that that's a guy you keep for this year and help him or have him help the growth of Mason McCormick. I know a lot of people are like, oh, why would they go into 2025 starting Mason McCormick? They took him in the 4th round for a reason. Like, that's still a relatively valuable draft pick that they took McCormick with. Like, they didn't select him with the idea of never playing him. Now, if he was like a 6th, 7th round pick, okay, yeah, then you should talk me into be like, okay, he's basically going to be there to be more of a backup type. But they took Mason McCormick for a reason. So, and I think that reason is, okay, we're not going to extend James Daniels. If we can't retain him, then we at least have a guy that's been in the system for a year that we feel confident enough in putting into the starting lineup and having him grow. That rumored deal was Samuels and Aaron Banks for a 2nd and Daniels. Okay. If they were to get a guard in return, like an Aaron Banks in this situation, I could be a little bit more on board with it. Aaron Banks, I think James Daniels is better than Aaron Banks. But again, I mean, if you're getting Deebo Samuel and a starting caliber guard in return, I can be more on board with it. Sure. Yeah, and I see here had us getting Aaron Banks back. So sure, if it gets them a guard in return that can start this year and still be starting caliber, I would be more on board with it. Yeah, that would be more okay with me. But again, in this situation, it would mean that George Pickens would really have to take a step up in terms of being a legitimate number 1 receiver. Because again, I've said this all offseason. I think he's a very, very good number 2. At this point, he has to improve in a couple facets of his game to become a true 1. And it's great that he can catch 50-50 balls downfield and turn them into 70-30 balls. And it's great that he can catch, short routes close to the line of scrimmage and take them for a lot of yards after the catch. But he's got to be able to be a more consistent winner at the line of scrimmage in terms of his route running. He's got to be able to separate in the intermediate portion of the field. And while he got better at that, there's still room for improvement in order for him to be looked at as a true number 1 X receiver in an offense. And so if they do get Deebo Samuel, then okay, that's cool. You got another weapon, but that means that George Pickens is going to really have to establish himself as a number 1 receiver. McCormick has apparently in camp been one of our most impressive offensive linemen. If they were to move Daniels, it's because McCormick is pushing him out. And again, I like Mason McCormick a lot. I talked to Mason McCormick this past Thursday after practice during OTAs. They have been working him at both left guard and right guard. I asked him about it. He confirmed that to me. He just said, look, man, I'm ready to play whenever. I'm going to play wherever. He just has a really good attitude about this entire thing. And he sang the praises of James Daniels and Isaac Seumalo, saying that he couldn't have asked for better veterans in this situation to make sure that he's ready to really help him along. So he's had a great attitude about all this. He's taken, the OTA process in stride and really just tried to do the best that he can to make an impact and to catch everybody's eye. So I'm excited to see what he brings to the table on the field, especially come preseason and camp. We're going to, once we see him, live reps in August, I'm going to be, keeping an eye on McCormick even more. But I like what I've seen from him thus far. Obviously, it's still very early. They've had 6 OTA practices. But from what I've seen, I've liked what I've seen from him. I think the Jefferson contract has actually hurt the Steelers' chances of trading for a potential number 1. The price of wide receiver has ballooned up and potentially paying George Pickens if he broke out. Yes and no. I think the point right now is, if you can get a guy that can help your offense, then you do it and you figure out the rest later. In terms of George Pickens, yes, he is, like I said, he's proven to be a good receiver. Now, if he takes a step forward and becomes a great receiver, then yeah, you got a little bit of a predicament on your hands in terms of, okay, how are we going to keep both of these guys? And that would certainly be something that you have to figure out down the line. But I will say this. it doesn't look as if they're going to have, a massive quarterback contract on their hands in the near future. Even if one of Fields or Wilson does play well, they aren't going to garner elite quarterback money. So it's not as if you're going to have a quarterback contract that eats up a lot of your cap. And right now, I mean, the deals of TJ Watt are big. Minka Fitzpatrick has a big contract. Alex Highsmith is relatively big. But offensively, I mean, overall, they're going to have approximately $85 million in cap space next year. And then what, in future years after that, that's, to be determined depending on what they do next year. But yeah, I'm not necessarily worried about that right now. But yeah, I mean, you'd be hard pressed to find a team that would pay big money for two receivers. But if they're not paying big money for a quarterback, that can make it more. You could talk me into it in that situation. I like the idea of trading for a John Mechie if it were a conditional 6 or straight up 5th. Super talented and coming back from cancer. I see his breakout this season. If they were to trade for John Mechie, I don't even think it would take that much to get him, because you got to remember it took a 6th round pick and Dante Jackson to get Deontay Johnson. Deontay Johnson's far better than John Mechie. So you could probably get John Mechie for one of the 7th round picks that you got from the Eagles for Kenny Pickett. You could probably do the same for Treylon Burks too. The Titans are basically waiting for somebody to offer something for Treylon Burks. So you could get him for next to nothing. You could get John Mechie for next to nothing, because right now he's 5th on the depth chart. He's going to be behind Collins, behind Stephon Diggs, behind Tank Dell, behind Noah Brown. He's probably the 5th receiver on that team. So you could get him for next to nothing. And again, if it ends up being Burks or Mechie, I think that the reason that would be the case is because they couldn't land any of these other big fish that they've been targeting. So it's obviously they're going to, try to get some sort of, some sort of white whale. And if they can't get that, if they can't get this big fish, then they're going to have to settle for a minnow. But they're going to be trying to get a minnow that has the upside of being, a potential big fish. I wouldn't mind getting Banks back for Daniels. You're getting a complimentary piece for GP, and just don't see the Steelers paying Daniels after the guard. I don't either. And again, this is very much, the the Omar Khan era, being like, look, man, we got to play it smart. This is a business. We like James Daniels, but we don't want to pay huge money for him. And look, he's going to get a bag elsewhere. When they signed him, they gave him a pretty nice deal. But again, they seem to have been planning for the future when they drafted Mason McCormick. And if you can have a guy who you groom in-house for a year, that's not going to cost you a lot of money that you can start, then you're definitely going to do that. So I can understand that side of things. What's up, Jared? Congrats on 1K. Thank you, man. I appreciate that. Yeah, crossed the 1,000 subscriber threshold on Saturday. So thank you guys so much for that. That is absolutely awesome. Again, like 700 new subscribers since we started doing this around draft time. So like a month and a week, that much growth, it means a lot to me. So thank you guys so much for continuing to watch and subscribing and supporting the channel and supporting me. It means a lot. If you want to continue to support me in any sort of way, if you want to leave super chats, you can do that. If you want to become a Pump Fake Plus subscriber, you can do that. Don't have to by any means, but those are things that you can do to continue to support me and support the channel and help it continue to grow. So I appreciate all of you so much for the just insane growth over the last month. It does mean a lot. Appreciate it. Steelers are too cheap to spend on offense. They refuse to spend there. You got to remember, man, this isn't Kevin Colbert. It's Omar Khan. And the fact that they've been willing to make a lot of moves that we didn't think that they were willing to make, I think that there's a lot of things in the air right now that wouldn't have been before. And again, they've tried to get Courtland Sutton. They've tried to do that. They've reached out to 6 teams, reportedly, to try to get a new receiver. The 49ers, the Broncos, reportedly Seattle. They've done their due diligence trying to get a big name receiver. So they're more than willing to do it at this point. It's just a matter of finding a team that's willing to do business. And if they can't find one, then it's going to be, okay, Traylon Burks, John Mechie, what have you. But this isn't the Kevin Colbert era Steelers where they're not going to make moves. They are more than willing to try to get a big name receiver opposite of Pickens. It's just a matter of finding somebody who is who's willing to do business and send a receiver their way. My target a wide receiver, and they keep disrespecting Minka. It's wild. I don't know where the disrespecting Minka thing came from. But yeah, obviously Brandon Aiyuk would be the dream. That's been kind of, for Steelers fans, that's been the target ever since before the draft. So yeah, look, he kind of leaned into it because remember he tweeted directly at Mike Tomlin saying, "Hey, I'm hearing we're twins," with like the eyes emoji, and that sent Steelers Twitter into a frenzy. And then Bryant McFadden had that tweet where he's like, "Oh, they're gonna get a new receiver," and then nothing happened. So it's been a lot of sitting on your hands and waiting and hoping that something happens. But in large part, it's just been a lot of waiting. Do we franchise George Pickens or sign him up with a similar deal of Jeff? George Pickens isn't getting $35 million a year. I'll tell you that right now. Unless Pickens goes off for like 130 catches, 12 touchdowns, like something insane, he's not getting Justin Jefferson money. If he balls out for the next couple years, do they maybe give him a deal in the upper 20s, mid 20s? Sure, but he's not getting best receiver in the NFL money. Omar Khan has to negotiate with Rooney Jr. to spend money on a wide receiver. Look, man, again, they've done their due diligence. They're reaching out. They want a guy. It's just a matter of finding a team who's willing to do it. Cheap is cheap. Look at the money spent on offense. Sure, but at the same time, a lot of these guys are like on rookie deals. Like Najee's on a rookie deal. Jaylen Warren's on a rookie deal. George Pickens is on a rookie deal. Roman Wilson's on a rookie deal. They spent nice money on Isaac Smallwood. They spent nice money on James Daniels at the time. Zach Frazier, rookie deal. Broderick Jones, rookie deal. Troy Fajardo, rookie deal. So a lot of it's just like they're all young. And even then, like Russell Wilson, he's getting paid $40 million this year by another team. So it's a matter of they've spent premium draft capital on the offense. It's just they haven't had to, these guys are still growing. They haven't come to that second contract portion of their careers yet. So not that they're not willing to spend, it's just they haven't had to yet. But yes, I would like to see them get, a player that is worth premium money that they give premium money to. And again, I think a lot of it was they were banking on teams being more willing to move off of receivers. And maybe they just kind of got shut down in that regard. Again, they reached out multiple times to Denver about Courtland Sutton. They were told no. So that's what it more or less comes down to. I think Pittsburgh was more or less banking on this. Because remember, they had a visit scheduled with Mike Williams. My opinion is that they were banking on Mike Williams coming in and not leaving the building. Unfortunately for them, he went to the Jets and they paid him a lot of money and he didn't leave the Jets building. So then they were kind of like, crap. Well, let's try to trade for a guy then. But at that point, again, I think that they assumed the trade market was going to be still buzzing and it quieted down a little bit. They reached out to the 49ers. Now, according to Mike Lombardi of the GM Shuffle podcast, former NFL GM, he said that Pittsburgh believed they had a deal with the 49ers during the draft for a receiver. And he didn't specify whether that was Aiyuk or Deebo Samuel, but Pittsburgh, they were trying to get a guy. And again, they were reaching out, trying to get Courtland Sutton, trying to get Aiyuk, trying to get Samuel. Maybe they touch base trying to get a Terry McLaurin. Maybe they've, it was reported by Ben Albright that Seattle was one of the teams that they reached out to. That probably means they tried to get either Tyler Lockett or DK Metcalf. So they're doing their due diligence. It's just a matter of teams wanting to play ball with them. That's what it comes down to. Now, there's a lot of comments here. I'm scrolling through. There was a list of top safeties, and Minka was 11th or 12th listed. Oh, okay. So that was actually done by my boss at USA Today, Doug Farrar. I love Doug Farrar to death. I saw the list. I immediately texted him. I was like, I'm going to do a piece on you leaving Minka out of the top 11. And the reason that he gave me, and it's fair reasoning, I get it, was this is more or less based off of, in my opinion, I think, based off of play from the season before going into this year. And he said, even when Minka was healthy, he didn't quite look like what he did in 2022, which is fair. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that he had a lot of hats to wear in the defense. And with all the additions that they've made on that side of the ball, hopefully they let him just get back to being what he's best at doing. That's being a ball hawking center fielder, playing that deep third part of the field, and creating turnovers. So that was his reasoning to me, is that he didn't look all that great even when he was healthy. He missed 7 games last year, and there were guys that played better a season ago. Last year was the first time in Minka Fitzpatrick's career that he didn't register an interception. So it wasn't his best year. Doug also told me, and I quote, I'm very much hoping for a bounce back year. So he's not low on Minka Fitzpatrick. He's just, last year, Minka didn't play all that well, and he was hurt a lot. So I get on the surface why people would be mad. I had a little bit of questions myself. That's why I reached out to him. I was like, I'm doing a piece on this, Doug. But no, Doug is the absolute best. I love working for Doug. But yes, there was reasons for him having Minka lower on the list. I'd have to go back and see where he ranked him ahead of the 2022 season, but I know it wasn't that he was on the list for sure. So yeah, that was the reason given to me. Jerry, we still got CeeDee Lamb and other receivers to pay by the time GB14 comes up. His brand might cost. Okay, I'm trying to read this, and my brain is not working trying to read this. Yes, there's other receivers that will get paid. In terms of CeeDee Lamb, I'll say this: Dak Prescott and or CeeDee Lamb are playing their final years in Dallas this season. At least one of them will be gone next year, potentially both, because Jerry Jones isn't going to give CeeDee Lamb $33 million a year. I'll bet you that much. And Dak Prescott, it looks like he's going to get more money elsewhere because they're dragging their feet on that. So it wouldn't surprise me if CeeDee Lamb plays elsewhere. It wouldn't surprise me if Dak Prescott plays elsewhere. We'll see. I'm just hoping that Juju isn't the wide receiver. Yeah, I agree. I did a quick piece on that too last week. A few Patriots media folks were saying that they wouldn't be surprised if Juju Smith-Schuster just gets cut to save money. I don't even think it was to save money, because I think it would still I think it would cost them like $1 million to cut him. But there's no spot for him in that offense, and he's just not good. I think it would be dumb to bring Juju back. He's not nearly what he used to be. He's 27, but he's been in the league for now, 7 years. His knees are shot to hell. He's just not good. So I would like to think it wouldn't be Juju. Really hoping it wouldn't be Juju, because yes, that would annoy me as well. I agree about them clearly spending money this year, and they will make a move. I doubt Khan would have paid Mike Williams $15 million. That's the thing too. Like, if you're Mike Williams and you're sitting there getting a contract that offers you up to $15 million, I mean, I don't think I would have turned it down either. So like, I get it. But again, I think that their plan was, hey, we'll sign Mike Williams, we'll get him in the building. We won't let him leave. And then if they would have had a receiving trio, assuming they still would have drafted Roman Wilson, if they would have had a receiving trio of Pickens, Mike Williams, and Roman Wilson, you can do a lot worse than that. But again, the Jets gave him a lot of money. He didn't leave. I don't blame him. After this year, Pickens will think he's worth top 5, at least top 10 money. Again, depends on how much he produces. That's the big thing here. He's got to prove that he's a true number 1. And again, if he has a ginormous season, cool, then you pay him. But, again, I think that Pickens to this point in his career has been a very, very good number 2. but there's things that he has to get better at to be a number one. How much will Aiyuk sign for? I mean, don't be surprised if it's upper 20s, low 30s. I think if I had to put a number on it, maybe right around what Amon-Ra St. Brown got, like 27, 28, somewhere in there. I'd say his floor is probably 25. I think it's going to be higher than that, though, so probably 26 to 28. But it also wouldn't surprise me if he got 29, 30 per year. He's good. He's very good. And again, as more of these guys continue to get signed, now obviously with Justin Jefferson, if you're Brandon Aiyuk, you're not getting $35 million a year. But, he can look at that and say, okay, I want at least 28. I want at least what Amon-Ra is getting, or 27, somewhere in there. So he's going to get upper 20s minimum. They probably won't re-sign Pickens either way. I doubt that. If they don't get a guy that they're paying and Pickens continues to play well, they'll bring him back. But again, I think that in terms of the most realistic options, I would still say that Courtland Sutton, of all the big names, is probably the most realistic to me, even though to this point the Broncos haven't been willing to play ball with other teams. If he doesn't show up for all the mandatory stuff and we get to training camp and he's still not showing up, then maybe they change their tune. At least they should. It's a team that has a young quarterback, needs to do all they can to, help him along and help him grow. And the last thing that they need is, all of those type of, that outside noise. And by the way, Courtland Sutton, totally get why he's holding out. He's played with 10 different quarterbacks. They haven't had any sort of success since he's been there, and he wants taken care of. He's only got $2 million in guaranteed money left on his current deal. He wants taken care of and he wants valued. So I totally get it. And I'm very much pro player when it comes to that type of stuff. So totally get why Courtland Sutton would hold out for more money. There's two things that you can take from an NFL career, and that's money and memories. Make as much of both as you can. So, Denver hasn't budged in terms of a new deal. They haven't necessarily budged in terms of trade talks. Everything's just kind of stagnant and they're at a crossroads. So we'll see, again, if he doesn't show up to these mandatory things, and if we get into training camp and he's still not there, maybe they change their tune, but we'll have to see. Pickens will only get what he earns. So if he earns it, they will pay him just like any player across that bridge when they come to it. Yeah, I agree. And again, it's a matter of if he proves himself to be a legitimate number one. That's what it's always going to come down to. I know I'm going to sound repetitive, but that's what it comes down to. Does Pickens take that step forward, show that he's a number one receiver? And if he does, then yeah, they'll pay him. They'll take care of him. Steelers haven't been shy about paying receivers in the past. They took care of Antonio Brown. They made sure that they kept him in-house. They paid Deontay Johnson, made sure that they extended him the first time around. So, look, if you play well and prove yourself to be a good receiver, they'll take care of you. Now, when they had three of them and had to choose between Mike Wallace, Antonio Brown, and Emmanuel Sanders, they chose Antonio Brown. It worked out in terms of getting, the best receiver in football for a 5-year stretch. So, if you prove yourself to be good, then they'll take care of you. At least at receiver. Now, obviously, there's situations where, we've seen in the past with the Le'Veon Bell type of stuff. Again, I think the Steelers were in the wrong there. I think Le'Veon Bell deserved the money that he was asking for. I think he was asking for 17 a year, because he's basically a receiver on top of being a running back. And again, pro player in a lot of these situations. I was very much pro Le'Veon Bell, and I wish that they would have paid him. Obviously, he went to the Jets, took less money, and his career never really got back to the point where it was when he was in Pittsburgh. But, the Steelers have shown in the past, again, with Antonio Brown, paying him, paid Deontay Johnson. If you're a good receiver, they'll keep you around. Got to prove it though. Yeah. And I think that that's what it comes down to with Pickens. And look, I don't doubt that he can be a really good receiver. I already think Pickens is good. But in terms of being that number one, he's put in a lot of work this offseason. He's worked out with Route God. He's shown that he cares about becoming, taking his game to that next level. And I really hope he does. And I believe that he can. It's just a matter of proving that. So we'll see. What defensive player was let go because of money? Well, that's a good question. I kind of see where that question's coming from. The Steelers have been one of those teams that has lived in the past a little bit too much. And that's one of the biggest criticisms I've had for them, is that they haven't been forward thinking enough when it comes to offense, which is why they can have a really good defense in the regular season and sneak into the playoffs somehow. But once they get into the playoffs, you don't have the offense to keep up with these other great offenses, which is also why I'm not too hard on the defense in the playoffs, because there's only so much they can do when their offense is constantly going 3 and out, constantly off the field quickly. They're tired, like against the Chiefs a few years ago. I didn't kill the defense because the offense was horrid. There's only so much that you can do with, an old Big Ben and slow defensive backs. Like TJ Watt did all that he could. Highsmith did all that he could. Cam did all that he could. It's only so much you can do with the talent that you have. Like, you can be a good regular season defense, but if you don't have the offense in the playoffs, it doesn't matter. Steelers are stuck in 1970. Look, again, I've agreed with a lot of that as of late. I wrote about it a lot last year, where Mike Tomlin still thinks that it's 2008. Because, by the way, in the last Super Bowl that they won, their offense wasn't great. Yeah, sure, they had Ben, and they came up when it mattered most. They weren't scoring a ton of points. They didn't have, receivers who were having ginormous years that season. Ben threw 17 touchdowns and 15 picks in 2008 when they won the Super Bowl. And yes, he had that clutch gene in him and whatnot, but it's not as if he was playing as well as, a Peyton Manning. It's not as if he was putting up these ungodly numbers that year. He wasn't. That team really got there on the strength of having the best defense in the world. And I think Tomlin still thinks that you can do that, or at least he did. Again, they've changed their tune a lot this offseason and have, really put in effort to make their offense better. It's still not a great offense, but on paper, it's a hell of a lot better than what we've seen in recent years. So I do agree that they've lived in the past a little bit too much, especially in the past 5 to 7 years. I would say more so the past 5 years, because in 2016, 17, when they were going to the AAC title game, it was off the strength of their offense, and the defense was bad. They got to find a happy medium. Like, can't just be, okay, defense is going to be really good, but the offense is going to stink. It can't just be, okay, offense is going to be really good, but the defense can't stop anybody. Like, there's got to be a happy medium. Like, the Chiefs have the best quarterback in the world, have the best offensive mind in the league in Andy Reid, but they didn't have any receivers worth a piss, not named Rashee Rice. And they were able to win the Super Bowl because they had an incredible defense this past season. So, you've got to be able to find that balance. They don't have a Patrick Mahomes. They don't have a Josh Allen. They don't have a Joe Burrow. But you gotta find something on offense to at least make you competitive. Okay? The Lions, for instance. I like Jared Goff. He's not an elite quarterback, but you give him a great offensive line. You give him 2 really good running backs and a great run game. And you give him great offensive play caller and play designer in Ben Johnson and Amon-Ra St. Brown. He can make things happen. The Lions were probably the most balanced offense in the NFL last year. And if not for a couple dumb decisions by Dan Campbell, they probably go to the Super Bowl. So you can get there with quarterbacks that aren't elite. And again, Jared Goff, I like Jared Goff. He's a good quarterback. He ain't an elite quarterback. And their defense was much better in 2023 than it was in 2022. They were perfectly balanced. And the Steelers got to find a way to get there as well. The Steelers still going to experiment with Minka in the box? I don't think so. I think a lot of these moves this past offseason were so Minka can just do what he does best, and that's play center field. And look, that's great that he's good at other things, but it takes away from the thing that he does best. I think that the reason that you get a Patrick Queen and draft Peyton Wilson was so Minka doesn't have to come up in the box. I think the reason that you bring in a Deshaun Elliott is because he's a good run-stopping safety that you can put in the box. I think a lot of these moves were get good players to fill needs, but also take some hats off Minka Fitzpatrick so he can just do the thing that makes him, that's made him a 3-time All-Pro. So I'm not worried about Minka per se. I think that a lot of these moves were made to take the load off of him more or less, and help him not have to worry so much about playing up in the box, defending the run. And I think a lot of these moves are gonna help him do that and get better. Hold on, I'm replying to a text real quick because I got a call. Didn't expect that. So I think that a lot of the moves made this year were, again, get better, and at certain spots, like get better at linebacker for sure. They get 2 new linebackers who are going to be awesome, but also take the load off Minka. Great take on the defense having to do everything. Look at week 2, Browns defense scored for it. Yeah, that was the thing. Like, I can't remember the exact number, but the Steelers in the entire era of Kenny Pickett, they scored 30 points once, and it was against Cincinnati in 2022, and they got to 30 points, like they scored late to get to 30. But if you look at the games throughout the Pickett era, when they allowed 21 or more points, they never won. And the only time that they did was when in that week 2 game against Cleveland, where the defense scored more than the offense. Like, it was unsustainable. And everybody who's like a big Pickett defender is like, oh, but they keep winning games. Sure. But it's very evident that it's not because of him. It's because the defense is awesome. Like, Tim Tebow won games, but everybody and their mother knew that he sucked. Steelers fans know that he won games, and then immediately got traded to the Jets and never started a game again because he wasn't good. And that's why, like, I thank my lucky stars. I don't know if I necessarily believe in a higher power, but I believe in Mason Rudolph. And I thank Mason Rudolph every day, because had he not balled out, we would probably be going into another season with Kenny Pickett as the potential starting quarterback. And that would have given me gray hair. I couldn't do it. I wasn't willing to do it. It would have been hell. So thank you, Mason Rudolph. I see a lot of comments in. Missed the opening of the Twitter wide receiver reports more BS. Or are they actually hearing something? I don't know, man. I think everybody's going to keep talking about it until they get one, myself included. Like, again, I've been kind of a broken record about my thoughts. I don't think it's going to be one of the 49ers. If it is, cool. I don't think it's going to be. I think it's going to be Courtland Sutton if it's going to be any of the big names. And if it's not any of the big names, I think it'll be a Treylon Burks fallback, a John Mechie fallback. But there's some people who do think that it could be Aiyuk or Deebo Samuel. I know Ray Fittipaldo of the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette thinks it'll be one of those two. Personally, I think that if that were to happen, it would have happened during the draft. So I think Sutton makes the most sense. Yeah, I do too. I think that, again, situation-wise, he wants either out of Denver or he wants a new deal. If he doesn't show up to the mandatory stuff, we'll see. Not all Pickett's fault. Crappy OC. Look, man, two things can be true. Matt Canada sucked, but so did Kenny Pickett. He wasn't good. On the cheaper side and able to extend Pickens. Yes, exactly. Like you can get Cortland Sutton and not have to break the bank. You can still give him a new deal, but it's not going to be, as much as you would pay an Aiyuk or a Deebo Samuel. So we'll see. I don't know if I believe in a higher power, but yeah. that does sound good. Yeah, that would be the chorus of a. He plays in Tennessee now. He plays in Nashville. It makes sense. So, I think we can kind of leave it there, though. This is kind of the first long receiver discussion we've had in a little bit. So, a nice 45-minute discussion. If you're not already subscribed to the channel, I'll do a few call to actions here before we get out of here. If you're not already subscribed to the channel, make sure you do that. Steelers shows throughout the rest of the offseason every Monday through Friday night. Overall NFL content-wise, me and my friend Kevin Ostreicher from the Locked On Ravens podcast did the AFC North preview show today, which you can watch on the channel, or you can listen to wherever you get your podcast. That's the Pump Fake with Jarrett Bailey. You can listen wherever you get your podcasts. Me and Kevin Ostreicher going over the AFC North. So a double dip of Steelers-related content from me today. Tomorrow, very fun show on the Pump Fake. You get 2 of those a week. So tomorrow it will be me, Mike Golick Jr., and JP Acosta. We are drafting quarterbacks and we are drafting candies. So 5 rounds, 5 picks apiece for each of us. So we're each going to draft a quarterback and a candy per round. That'll be very fun. That's tomorrow at 3 p.m. Eastern. If you can't catch it live, obviously it'll be on the channel afterwards too. So me, JP Acosta, Mike Golick Jr., drafting quarterbacks, drafting candies, and it'll be very fun. That's one of those things in June where you're just like, sure, let's just be goofy and have fun with the show. So that'll be very fun. We're going to see who comes away with the best haul of quarterbacks and candies. If I have it my way, I get Josh Allen and the Reese's shapes in the first round, and I cross my fingers with whatever else happens. So that'll be very fun. Tune in tomorrow at 3 p.m. Eastern for the Pump Fake for that. And again, if you can't watch it live, it'll be on the channel afterwards. So tune in for all of it. And then we'll be back tomorrow as well for another episode of Black and Gold Breakdown to continue talking Steelers. So I appreciate you guys. Again, if you're not subscribed, absolutely subscribe. Tell your friends to subscribe. Do all that fun stuff. I appreciate you guys for watching. As always, I'll see you tomorrow. Again, a double dip of shows tomorrow. Pump Fake at 3 and then Black and Gold Breakdown back here tomorrow night. Thank you guys so much for watching. I'll see you tomorrow.